Okay, so we're back. We're going to talk about journal articles and how they look. And I'm going to use an example article that I have actually read recently because I'm working on a research project. I like to do this. I know it sounds really nerdy and weird, but I like to do a research project alongside my students so that when I'm referencing what you should think about, I'm referencing the same project all semester long. And you not only get excellent real life examples, but also I'm not accidentally helping someone write their paper. So none of you are allowed to do research on positive psychology and how it impacts happiness and a sense of well-being, because that's the project I'm working on this semester. So I will be loading the article that I'm about to refer to into Blackboard so that you can either call it up on your screen or you can print it and have it with you as you watch this video. I will be looking at it on my screen, so if my eyes are in weird places, that's why. It is not required that you print this article out, but printing out this article, if you are a visual learner, will actually help you a great deal because it will give you a sense of the continuity of the article as you're thinking about the superstructure for the articles that you'll be reading, especially once you start finding your own articles to read when we go into the research process that's active. So let's begin by talking about the article Toward a Better Understanding of What Makes Positive Psychology Interventions Work, predicting happiness and depression from the person times intervention fit in a follow-up after 3.5 years. Whew, that's a big old long title. So we'll start there. There are two parts to this title. The part at the beginning, Toward a Better Understanding of What Makes Positive Psychology Interventions Work, is called the title. Then there's a colon, like there very often is in academic work. And everything that comes after the colon is what we call the subtitle of the article. The stuff before the colon is usually the sexier language. It's the language that says, hey, you want to be interested in this article. The stuff that comes after the colon, the subtitle, is usually, here's the really boring jargon that tells you what exactly this article will deal with. So, Toward a Better Understanding of What Makes Positive Psychology Interventions Work may not sound sexy to you, but as a researcher looking at positive psychology and its impacts, it's a really sexy title. Then they want me to know after the colon, we're going to take a look specifically at this kind of measure, person times intervention fit. And we're looking at it not for the first time, but after 3.5 years of being able to use it, looking back to see, are we still getting consistent results? So tons of information embedded in that title. Believe it or not, the very first thing you need to do when you read an article is deeply think about, and all the way around, think about, what is the title giving you? What does it assume you know? What do you need to look up? In this case, I would need to look up what is person times intervention fit. I would need to find out how many studies have been done using this particular intervention model. I would need to know when they were done, particularly relative to what we're going to talk about in a second about this article, which is how old it is. So I'm on the title and I've already looked up 4 things. The next thing I need to make sure I look up is, who are these authors? To some extent, we're given a little information. All 4 of our authors are from the University of Zurich in Switzerland. How do I know? Because the affiliation provided after their names is only one affiliation. If they were from different universities would be listed, and that happens all the time. So I know that Proyer, Wellenzone, Gander, and Ruck are all authors on this particular article. Notice I did not say Renee, Sarah, Fabian, and Willibald. I didn't avoid those names because Willibald is weird sounding. I didn't use their first names because they're not my friends. They're academics and authors, and we refer to them in writing and verbally by their last names only. So this article, if you were referring to it in a paper you were writing, would be referred to as Proyer, Wellenzone, Gander, and Ruck. You would never talk about the author's first names, even with their last names. You need to look up who they are. Yes, you're told they're at the University of Zurich, and that asterisk means that Proyer is the one you would contact if you wanted to ask some questions, which, by the way, you're allowed to do, even encouraged to do in academic work. You would also want to look these folks up in terms of looking at what are their PhDs in, who's a grad student here, what other things have they written, what other schools have they worked at. You want to have that information so you understand, who am I swallowing information from? I don't want to just believe everything I read. And so one of the things I need to do, even with academic peer-reviewed work, and we'll talk about peer review in a second, is figure out who wrote this stuff I'm about to put in my head. Who am I letting talk to me in my head? Where do they come from? How do they think? What other things have they thought about? What have they studied? These are basics. So I'm only 2 pieces into my academic article. I've already spent 30 minutes looking stuff up. You're probably horrified. I'm excited. You don't understand what you're looking at until you've done this work. The next thing I need to take a look at is on that top page, at the very top of the page, it says Applied Psychology, Health and Wellbeing. This is the name of the journal, not the publisher. The publisher is the International Association of Applied Psych, IAAP. That's the publisher, not the database. Database is different yet again. I got this one from Academic Search Premier. All that is a database that aggregates all these different journals into one place. And by doing so, all the articles that are in the journals are also aggregated into one place. Databases don't write things. Publishers don't write things. Authors write things and put them in journals. Journals have an audience. And the audience for this journal, Applied Psychology, Health and Wellness is its subtitle, is folks who are working in fields of psychology where they don't just sit and think about psychology. They actively put principles of psychology into play. That's the applied part. So Applied Psychology, Health and Wellbeing is the title of the journal. IAAP is the publisher of the journal Applied Psychology. Academic Search Premier is the database from which I found this article because it aggregates lots of different journals and all their articles in one place. After you see Applied Psychology, Health and Wellbeing as a banner, you see it written again. That's still just the journal title. And then you see 2015. That is the year in which this particular article was published. 7 is the volume, and 1 is the issue. So volume and issue show us where in the year 2015 this work was published. 108-128 is you being told it starts on page 108 and it runs for 20 pages and ends on page 128. That's vital information, particularly as you start looking for information of your own, because if it has 1 or 2 pages, it's not academic research. It's published in peer-reviewed journals, but it's not research. It's not long enough to set up the methodology, show you the results, and analyze the results. So those page numbers can be a quick way of understanding what it is you're looking at. Right under the author's names, you see background : This is also sometimes called abstract. And what it is, no matter what, is an abstract. So even when it's labeled background, it's still an abstract. It's 1 paragraph that tells you everything you're going to learn in this article, almost always followed by a list of keywords that would be your friend if you were trying to figure out new ways to talk about what it is you're learning in the database when you're searching for information. The article itself has sections. Introduction is a section. Background is a part of introduction. And so those labels help kind of guide you through the article so that you understand a roadmap of what you're looking at, even the very first time you skim it, not even reading it. Making a map for yourself before you ever begin reading, using those subtitles, using those different sections within subtitles will help you a great deal. It's like outlining the article, but not before you write it, after it's been written. And the last page, 2 pages, 2.5 pages of this article is the references. That lists every single source these authors either read and then used in their article, or read and used in their thinking, even if they didn't directly reference the information in their article. So those are all things to go take a look at before you ever even start reading. Approaches to the article you want to have before you ever spend a second reading the content of the article. Seems like a lot, I know. That's why you only have one article to read this week. And you need to do it more than once, because at the end of the week, you're going to be asked to think about the article that you're reading that I posted, our exam questions known in advance, and the information you got from Weapons of Math Destruction in terms of not only how they are talking about similar things, but also how they approach those things differently because of the kinds of sources that they are. And to be able to do that assignment effectively, you're going to have to read the chapter that I have you reading this week, which is we read it last week, Finding and Evaluating Sources. And you're going to have to look for activity 4A within that chapter. I'll say it again, if you're using the PDF, it's not going to have 4A listed. You need to go to the web link itself to be able to have the headings that you need that'll say 4A. Then you go to the last paragraph of that activity where it lists the questions you need to use to guide you, and then use the things I gave you instead of doing the first parts of 4A where you go look up your own information. You're using what I gave you to do the last paragraph of 4A in examining how these things interact with each other and why. So that's a lot to take in. I'm glad I did it in 2 videos, and I bet you are too. Do not hesitate to take notes during this video as you watch it again. Watch it as many times as you need to. And if you have questions about the anatomy of an academic article and what you would even need to know any of this for, shoot me an email. We'll talk soon.